G'day guys, and welcome back to episode number 16 of the Daily Discomfort podcast. Today we're joined by Lachlan Stuart, who is a men's high performance coach and, dare we say, an athlete in it in himself, past and present. Lachlan, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey thus far in your own athletic career, but also in the work that you do today?
Thanks for having me back on. I say, because I stuffed up the first time with my poor recording on the mobile device. We had everything last time. You had a fire alarm and all of
Out
those.
Of the building, mate. Yeah,
it was wild. We overcame so much, only for my phone to ruin it for us. So, firstly, I'm a husband, first and foremost, about to become a father in February, which I'm very excited about. I got into business just off the back of wanting to solve a problem in my life, which was when I finished rugby, I didn't know who I was or what was left of me. I moved overseas to live out my dream, which was to play professional rugby. Did that in France. And while I was away doing that, my friends were doing their university degrees. They were finishing with, doctors, lawyers, engineers, all of those sorts of titles. And then my other mates were finishing their trades. So when rugby didn't work out the way that I wanted it to, I moved back to Australia. And everyone, it felt like, was 4 years ahead of me. And instantly I'm just thinking, like, what am I going to do with my life? Like, how am I going to be successful? Because that's ultimately what I wanted at that time. And that's what I'd always been told to do. And I knew that I wasn't going to go to university. It just never really interested me. And I didn't believe that I was smart enough to do that. And then from the flip side, I didn't believe that doing a trade would be able to give me the financial wealth that I wanted. Boy, was I wrong. And so I went down this self-destructive path for a while where I just wanted to avoid those big questions. Like, what are you actually going to do with your life? Like, who are you really? What excites you? And because I didn't have answers to that, I was like, let's run, man. Let's get away from this as quickly as possible. So I continued drinking, partying, and just avoiding myself. But the unfortunate thing, when you just bury things down, eventually they bubble up. And it bubbled up to a point where I found myself in a situation where I got in trouble with the police, wasn't proud of who I was. And I just remember sitting there in that moment and I wasn't proud of who I was. Like, I was genuinely disgusted. I remember looking around at all these people at the front of the pub, and I'm thinking, like, you're not supposed to be in this position. You went to a great school, you've had great opportunities, and you're not a bad person. The way that you're behaving and what you're running from is the reason why you're here. And I just never wanted to feel this feeling again. I didn't want to have all these eyes on me in this way. And in that moment, I just thought, if I don't get in a heap of trouble here, I am going to make some big changes. And it was within what felt like a 2-week period. It was probably actually 3 months. I met my now wife. I moved to Brisbane just because I needed to change my environment and I needed to face my reality of, like, figuring out who I was and what I was going to do next. And I always had this feeling in my stomach that I'm here to do something big. I just wasn't sure what that was after sport, but sport's always been a really big part of my life and shaped a lot of who I am as an individual. And when I was down here, I was doing so many different roles. I was working as an Uber driver. I was doing door-to-door sales. I was doing network marketing. I was, working as a carpenter. And I did all of these things, and I was learning skills. I was figuring out what I didn't like, what I did like, and I was slowly building into what I thought I could do. But in that process, a mate that I was playing footy with, Michael, he just knew that I wasn't happy. And I was so grateful. And this is where the importance of having people who give a shit and reach out to help, and you just taking the help. He came up to me and he was just like, mate, you just don't seem happy. And I'm thinking, like, is it that obvious? And he said, I'm going to this event. It's a personal development event in a couple of weeks. I've got a spare ticket. I'd love you to come. The ticket was $25. And at the time, that was the difference between buying a case of gold, like 4S gold, or going to the event. And it's crazy that I even thought that was a hard decision, right? But it was, because I didn't have much money and I didn't see any value in that. I'd never understood what personal development weekends were or events. But there was something that I was just like, I just am not happy. I'm going to trust this guy. And I respect this guy. So I went to this event and I took my mum as the safety blanket. Went to this event. It was like a Tony Robbins style event. We walk in, I look around and there's like 500 people jumping on chairs, high-fiving, hugging. I just remember being like, if anyone touches me, they're going to get a snot in the nose. Like, don't fucking touch me. But I sit down and we're watching this event and there's a guy speaking on stage. I've got my mum on my right, Tommy on my left. And I'm just like, could not take my eyes off this person. Everything that he was saying, I just resonated with. He'd struggled with his mental health. He'd had suicidal ideation. He'd hated where he was, and someone had reached out and offered him help, which was his sister. For me, it was Tom. And I just felt so fired up, and I did not know why. But I was in this environment with people who were just chasing more. It wasn't that they were necessarily broken, but they just wanted to live a great life. And that was infectious. I remember turning to mum and just being like, I'm going to do that one day. I don't know what that is, what he's doing on stage, but it makes me feel like I can believe in myself again. Like it makes me feel like I can do anything. I hadn't felt that for a long time. I walk away from that event and I started running my own events. Like literally a guy who, terrible communicator, never run an event in his life. I was inviting people around and just teaching them like how to think differently. Like shit that I didn't even understand, but I just learnt it from this guy and I was like, I'm doing that because people can benefit from it. And I started then using social media, back when Instagram was very new. And the best part about that was not only was I healing myself and understanding my own challenges and insecurities, etc., people were resonating with it and they were like validating it. And I got to a point where I think it was about 2016, end of 2016, where I was in a bit of a crossroads. I was sick of doing sales. I didn't want to go back and be a chippy anymore, and I was like, but I still am here for something. I just don't know what. But I kept trusting my gut. It was like pulling me. It's like, Lockie, you keep getting asked, like, how have you been able to overcome this? How have you dealt with your mental health challenges? How have you rebuilt a network? Like all of these questions that many of us just do naturally. It wasn't so natural for me. But then I also had people saying, thank you for sharing that because I've been hiding that and dealing with that my whole life. And it's good to know that I'm not alone. And I thought, and I was reading a book at the time, and I'm just like, imagine if I could find a way to do the work that I'm already doing because I'm genuinely focused on fixing my own challenges, but also I'm inspiring other people to do the same. Imagine if I could find a way to monetize that so I could do it for a living. Wow. And that's when I started my first men's group in 2017, where all I wanted was just to have a group of men from all walks of life who were going to come into this room. They were going to leave their income, their titles, all their status at the door, and they were going to be open, and I could learn from them selfishly, but I knew other people could, and that blew up, man. Like really, we had doctors, lawyers, bricklayers, students, like all kinds of people from all walks of life, and the connection was mind-blowing. And that's what led me into the work that I do now. I know that was a bit of a long-winded answer, but that's how we got here.
I think it's the perfect introduction to you and where you're at, where you're now, man. And there's so many things that we can draw on from that. And I think I want to kind of reflect on a few of those things now, especially being at this time of year with our focus on mental health in November. So a couple of things that stand out for me there is that someone noticed that you weren't doing well and they raised their hand to help, but you went with it. You didn't deny it. You didn't try to do it all on your own and be the lone wolf. You accepted like mentorship. You went out into that event. The other thing that connects me today on that point too is that the guy that was speaking at this seminar was relatable. This has been something that I see with the daily discomfort sessions. A few of the boys has mentioned, it makes such a difference when you see someone else is having the same challenges that you're having, or they've had those challenges in the past, because you don't feel alienated and you feel more empowered to actually do something about it. Like you were saying, I was inspired by this guy, but I actually felt empowered to go do something with my life too. And I think the funny thing as well, like both of us having been personal trainers in the past, is that we go, we've got a knack for this fitness thing. It's also helped us in many different ways with our physical and mental health and well-being. how about we just go help other people do that? So through our own journey of, transformation and working on ourselves, we're able to offer that to other people. So I love that you're doing it now, man. And it's, would you be happy if you were sitting there now running a carpentry business, as happy as you are now, having run 58 marathons in 58 days in 58 states, which we were just talking about earlier? With the work that you're doing now, is there many parallels that you see between the men that you're working with and the positions that you've been in the past with how they struggle? I'm sure you've got, kind of different types of characters, archetypes. Is there the guy who is the overworker and he doesn't take care of himself, in the background, or he puts everyone else first? Or are you working with guys who need to kind of have a bit of a kick in the ass to get themselves going, like they're a little bit slack and they do need a little bit more drive? Is there any parallels that you can see between some of those guys you work with and where you've been at in points in your life?
Definitely. I think that's a great point. For a lot of people that I'm working with now, they're very successful on paper, but they're unfulfilled in other areas of their life. And it makes sense when we spend so long working towards something. And the reason why, for me, that was football, rugby back in the day. Like, I'd spent all of my life wanting to achieve that and wanting to be that. And then when I achieved it, it's like, what's next? Or who am I outside of that? And it's scary because I've only been validated in this one field. It's the only thing that I know. So anything outside of that is scary. And we don't like to look stupid when you've already built some level of credibility in something, most people. And so when I see, men in general who have succeeded in something, or we've devoted so much of our time, and it doesn't matter the level of success, but if all you've known is the one thing, the change and looking outside of that can be very hard to acknowledge and to accept that we have sacrificed our marriages, we've sacrificed our health, we haven't had a lads weekend or a time with our friends for so long, but I can't do it because I'm building towards my next promotion. I'm building towards, or this is who I am. This is how people talk about me. And so I see that so commonly, and the biggest thing that goes crumbling for a lot of people, and this was also me, because part of the reason which I didn't share, I wanted to move overseas to play rugby instead of playing here, was I had a relationship breakdown. And look, I was 21, so it's not that big a deal. But a lot of men are coming to me when their wives have just walked out on them. And that sucks to see, because they didn't just, their partners didn't just make that decision today. They probably started making it about 18 months ago, and you didn't change anything because you were so focused on what you thought you needed to do that you never raised your head up and looked around and actually were starting to build some social awareness and self-awareness around, what does my marriage need? What does my wife need? What do my kids need? What does my life need? And that is a big issue, and more often than not, they have to rebuild knowing that moving forward, that, hey, if you're going to do things where you can have the success on paper, but you still have the marriage and it's a great marriage, you still have the health and vitality and energy to enjoy your life. And most importantly, it's like you're still having new experiences and getting these awesome adventures in, then you have to build that into your life now. Like, that doesn't just come, you don't just earn the right to do that. You earn the right by designing your days now.
It's almost like, and it relates to your story earlier, that guys have to hit this rock bottom for them to go, all right, something's not working right now and I have to change it, or they just keep bumping their head against the wall. What do you think it was for you, outside of having someone reach out, that allowed you to kind of make the decisions that you did and have that sort of upward trajectory? And I'm sure it wasn't just all up. I'm sure you had your ups and downs along the way. But was it belief in yourself to move forward? And with these guys too, who are seeking help from you, do you think it is that belief in themselves, or is it just the combination of that and then having someone who understands their position and knows that journey and knows how to support them on that?
It definitely wasn't belief, because I didn't want to live. Like, I didn't see myself as someone worth investing in. But because, during that guy's talk, I felt a sense of something. And in that moment, I used that emotional feeling to act. And I think the difference was I didn't just go and think about it. I did something, and straight away. And that kicked momentum into action, which then allowed me to slowly build confidence and start asking the right people and the right questions. But I've always believed, always, or not even believed, but I've always had this feeling in my stomach that I'm here to do something great. And I know people say that as like a cliche thing, but I have genuinely believed that like we're all here for something. And it doesn't mean you need to be a coach or an elite athlete or anything like that, but we're all here for something. It could just be to be the best husband you can be, or the best friend that you could be, or the best whatever. But to me, it's like that's always been in my gut. And it's the reason why when I was acting like a bloody hooligan during that period, I just felt so ashamed because I felt an immense amount of guilt because how I was acting and behaving wasn't aligned with how I thought I should have been acting and behaving. And so there was that gap, and that was where the guilt came in because I'm just like, you're better than this. And I know a lot of men think about that because a lot of men, they want to be a great protector and provider, but they also just want to be able to be vulnerable when they need to be. They also want to be able to just go have a golf day with their mates and just laugh and talk shit. They also want to know that when they take their shirt off and walk past the mirror, they're proud of what they see. They're like, wow, like that's awesome. I'm pumped for my next beach holiday. The challenge is once again that disconnect, like between how we're currently living our life and what we're prioritizing versus the outcome which we would like to have. And the only thing that's ever going to change that is changing your habits, right? Like the things that you're doing. And part of that means that we have to grow up. And I mean, what I mean by that is how I used to think and operate when I was a teenager and what was important to me is very different to now. But I still see, and I work with a number of men who are, mid-30s to even 50s, and they're still carrying on like they're 19 and 20, and they're the ones who, health's not in the best nick.
It's like Peter Pan, isn't it?
Yeah.
The boy who always wants to stay young. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not about taking out the fun, but it's just understanding that if we want to be fit and healthy when we're 70, like that starts today. Actually, it started yesterday, but it's the things that we're doing now. Same with if we want to have friends, you look at the bell curve of relationships, like especially for men, we're lonely as all buggery right now. But the bell curve is as soon as we finish school, we don't have time for that apparently. So then our friends, and we get married and we move towns and all of the things happen and we become more and more isolated. And then we go, well, what happens when you retire? You're not going to have the colleagues to go sit with every day. So who will you hang out with? Most people can't answer that question. So therefore I go, well, we need to prioritize building relationships today and continuing to invest in those relationships. Like daily deposits. That's what we need to be doing if we want to reap the fruits of our labor in the future. And it's not just about money, because money won't buy all of the things that we're actually trying to earn money for.
Yeah. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that one?
I was going to say, repeat the question back to me. Hey, I'm like forgetting my initial question here at that point.
I thought you were going to go then. I was about to drop it in, but we were like, for how we wanted it to be was, what would we do? Actually, I can't even remember the initial question now either. I just had it, and then
my questions are so long-winded.
All right. Anyway, carry on. We'll come back to that. But I'm going to ask you that back because I'm curious to your answer now.
Yeah. Well, I just had a question to follow up. You mentioned before, it was just something that you literally dropped in there. You said it started yesterday. It doesn't start today. It starts yesterday. What do you mean by that?
Realistic, like what we do today sets us up for tomorrow. So what I did yesterday set me up for today. And so it's a great, like when we look at life, everyone talks about being present. And I personally don't believe we're ever going to be fully present. I think we need to draw from the past to help us learn and become more efficient, prepare us for today. And we also need to look to the future to give us a bit of direction and think about the things that can excite us and give us the inspiration to continue going. So when I look at an individual, because what motivates us, it's pain or pleasure. Pleasure is the nice things. Pain is the thing that really puts a rocket up your ass. So if I can highlight to you that, hey, it should have started yesterday, and you go, yeah, I know it probably should have, we've just created a little bit of pain because you've now wasted a day. And it's not to belittle or make anyone feel bad. It's just understanding how the human mind works. And if we can build enough pain around the thing that you know you should be doing that's going to deliver a better outcome in your life, even if it's fabricated, right? Michael Jordan used to do it. Michael Jordan would find the smallest freaking thing that another player would do, and he'd be like, that's all I need. I'm going to focus on that, and it's going to make me destroy you in this match. And it sounds ridiculous, but if we can go, okay, well, that's going to create enough pain in my life for me to get up at 4:30 in the morning or whenever I need to, if it's raining outside, to go train myself or go to the gym, because I know that long term that's going to get me back to having better body image, being more confident in who I am, better energy and vitality, then I'm going to use that. Why wouldn't I use that? Because if everyone did the things we know we needed to do, Michael, we would all be happy, healthy, and wealthy, but we're not. And so we got to play, like our mind's playing games on us, so why wouldn't we play games with our mind?
I like that. Yeah, I like that. I've never heard that said before. I got to the point of remembering that kind of the first question there. So we're just talking about, like, for you, I think the question was around, was it your belief in yourself or was it someone else, like, lending the hand is kind of where it started there? And like you said for yourself at the time, you didn't have that belief there initially, like there was little will to live in there. So having that support, but you also then went into, like, environment and the habits that start to change over time. And that's where we kind of got to the point of, that starts yesterday. And then that kind of fed into the point now of, are we driven by pleasure or pain? Well, yes, we're driven by both. And then why do we need that rock bottom to actually get ourselves off our ass to keep pushing? It's a really interesting one because this year, as I've moved into yoga and that more, and I'm with a partner where she's taught me a lot more about self-compassion. It's been interesting because the pendulum starts to swing. You're like, all right, well, I used to do things this way and I used to let pain push me all the time, but how about I be more compassionate? But then you can go, like, a little bit too far with it and you're like, well, I'm not going to let pain push me, or I'm not going to look after my physique because I'm enough without looking a certain way. And it's interesting how we have that kind of all in or all out motion, or we allow that pendulum to swing. And I recall last time when we had this conversation, we talked a little bit about balance and your perspective towards that. But even in this kind of trajectory or journey that men go on, I feel like you have to almost fuck it up a little bit to find out a better way of doing things. So you might have to let pain drive you for so long, and that hits you to one point, and then the new mentor comes in, the guy that tells you, all right, you've been working yourself into the ground, but your relationship has gone down the shitter essentially, and you need to start to factor in things like this. So maybe you need a bit more compassion, maybe you need a bit more time for yourself, and you need to start to find, let's say in quotations, a little bit more balance, but you shift how much energy, effort, and time you're putting into certain areas of your life. One thing that sticks in mind there, and this is a really interesting one, is when you said you see men and their relationships that go downhill and they have this kind of bell curve trajectory. There was a few books that I read a while ago. One was No More Mr. Nice Guy. One was The Way of the Superior Man, David Dieta.
Yeah.
I actually met Dr. Robert Glover at the men's retreat recently. And
I saw he was there. How was that?
Such a fanboy experience. I just said thank you. I just said, mate, that was the first men's, kind of self-help book that I read. Did a lot for me. I know it's done a lot for other men, but for anyone listening, I'd highly recommend getting onto that book. And it was probably the first thing that pointed me in the direction of what you're talking about, that men go into these relationships, I think, almost one-dimensional at times. Like, they could be thinking, all right, it's just all about work and performance and their training, and then they kind of neglect their woman in a sense. And over time, that can diminish the relationship. Or maybe they drop their mission and it's all focus on their woman, and then they lose respect over time. And again, as we're saying, it's a matter of kind of tinkering and failing and learning from those things. What experience have you had in your life with being someone in a relationship, nurturing that relationship whilst building a business? Because I think this is one of the most challenging experiences for guys, is holding down a deep and intimate relationship whilst also staying on path with their mission and not getting lost in their mission or not getting lost in their partner.
You're exactly right when you say we have to almost mess it up to figure it out. I think failure is it's really the only way we learn. We don't learn through success because we haven't really pushed the limits.
Yeah.
For me, in the beginning, I was all about work because I thought to impress my wife, I have to earn a lot of money and I have to prove that I'm awesome. Like that was it. But then I stopped doing my social things. I stopped watching sport, and I was becoming a robot of a man. It wasn't very fun to be dating, I can imagine. But over time, I started realizing that balance isn't necessarily time. Like if we look at the balance of our split screen here, we're 50-50 on the screen. I would say you're speaking more intelligent stuff than I am, so therefore the intention behind the words that you're using are a better use of time for people. And so when I look at my day, there are certain commitments that we have that do consume certain amount of hours. And for most people, it's an 8-hour or 8 to 10-hour workday. And you can't change that because we have to go to work to put food on the table, to fund our lifestyles. Like that's just a non-negotiable. But then where people really fall off the wagon is they aren't intentional between the hours before work and after work. And that's where all the other domains come in. So we look at our mindset, we look at our relationship, our mission beyond career, like what are we here for? Our lifestyle, our personal growth. And if we're intentional, we can start finding a lot more fulfillment in our life because we're actually setting the little micro goals or learning things or having new experiences that fill our cup up. And then we go to work, and some people, not everyone's fortunate. I think the statistics is like 73% of people are disengaged in their careers. That's a lot of people. Now, not every one of those 73% of people are going to be able to find a career that they love. It's just not, I don't believe it's possible. But if we go, okay, that's okay, but how can I make the time outside of work really count so that I do feel fulfilled and I do feel like going to my job every day isn't the worst thing in the world? And that for me was so important in my relationship. Like even what I do now, I'm looking at, okay, I've worked big work days over the last decade in my career, like as most people have, like 15-hour days, plenty of sacrifices. But now I'm looking at my work day as if I've only got 8 hours a day. That's all I'm giving myself, obviously the odd exception. How do I become more efficient? What do I need to say no to? Because what most people do and what I was guilty of was I had time and plans before and after work, but if something went wrong or I needed to do something in work, I'd just go, I'll skip dinner tonight, or I'll push that commitment back, or I won't go to the gym today. And I was robbing myself. And then I was becoming frustrated and resentful, and I hated what I did. And it wasn't because I actually hated what I do. It was just because it was making me miss out on so many other things in my life that were important to me. And so that was really, and it's why I have non-negotiables around seeing my wife every night or every day. And we'll, do like date lunches and days, exercising every day, catching up with my friends. I've got my favorites list on my phone where I'll call my mates and I'll check in on all of these things, just like I do with my business, but I've only got 8 hours. And so what are the most important things that I could be doing with my 8 hours of work today that are going to help me achieve my career goal? That's it. It's very easy for us to overcomplicate things and make things more challenging than they need to be. And I also believe this, and I don't say this regularly, but I also believe it with our mind and our personal development. And I've been super guilty of it because when you're working in it, you go into the weeds of everything, right? And I've been seeing a psychologist for 8 years now. We keep coming back to the same thing. I've seen multiple psychologists, but everyone gets to this same bottleneck with me. And it's like, I'm still trying to prove to myself that I'm worthy. Now, here's the thing. I do believe I'm worthy, and I'm very proud of who I am. But what still drives me is that I'm not enough. And so it's very contradicting. And some people will say, well, you don't actually think you're worthy. And I go, well, no, I live every day. Like I am so proud of who I am, and I'm grateful for everything that I've got. But I know that I haven't even scratched the surface of what I can do while I'm here. And then my psych, and not knocking psychologists, but this is where I feel things can get overcomplicated. It's just, why don't we just be, rather than trying to find another reason why that is not solving that problem? Because it's not actually a problem in my mind. It's not holding me back. And I feel like that happens financially. It happens training. If we look at how do you build muscle and strength, and I know I'm tangenting here, there's some fundamental movements that do that. But then you jump on Instagram and there's people doing shit on Bosu balls and all kinds of stuff. And then the average punter is like, so do I need to be squatting on a Bosu ball? And you're like, no, mate, you don't. So,
Mate, you've got to have
yeah,
the cable set up at the optimum angle to get the right line of put. Yeah,
yeah.
it's. I
So I
understand
feel
where
it.
you're coming from with that.
Yeah, we're definitely overcomplicating things. So for me, I go, if I want to have a good marriage, what is the best thing that I can be doing that makes a marriage great for me? Oh, it's laughing, it's having fun, it's working towards something together, but it's not taking life too seriously. If I want to be fit and healthy, just move my body every day. Obviously, follow a program because then I don't have to think about it. I just follow and get feedback. If it's living a good lifestyle, decide to live a good lifestyle and do the things that you believe will help you live a good lifestyle. Plan it out and do it. That's that's as complicated as it really needs to be. But then, yeah, I'm not going to talk anymore because I could just keep talking about that.
No, I love it. I love it. And on the point too, this has been an interesting one. The study that I'm doing this week on the breathwork side of things, I've started to learn more about like somatic experiencing, and it's just experiencing through the body, right? And they talk about it like when we are talking to a therapist, like psychologist, a lot of the time we're talking head to head. So it's just words and words, your story versus my story. Whereas I feel like for you too, like I'm sure you would have had almost cathartic or therapeutic experiences running your marathons. You would have had a lot of work done during that time where the only conversation that was occurring was in your head. You weren't talking to someone else about it. And at the same time, like you said, you were just being like you were just doing something at the time. You were being the man that you were aspiring to be. So I 100% agree with that. I've got a lot of respect for psychologists, the level of intelligence and study and everything that they do. However, I also feel like if we do just talk about things, and this is kind of the touchy subject, I think, when we look at mental health and well-being, is we can't just talk about things. We can't just have awareness and just talking. It's going and doing these upskilling weekends. It's connecting with other men. It's moving our bodies and finding different modalities that work for us. And as you said too, it's not overcomplicating it. I've definitely been someone in my own life, in own right, that's been an overanalyzer, paralysis by analysis. I look into it too much. I overplan. And it's interesting because when you talk about the point of being unworthy or not enough or maybe not good enough, a lot of the time that's where it's coming from. Oh, I'm not good enough to do this, or it's not going to be enough if my presentation hasn't got 25 slides and I talk for 40 minutes, whatever that may be. But to also revert back to that initial point, when you talk about not being enough, like that's such an interesting topic. And I don't know if you and I have the answer, because I feel like I'm in the same boat as you, is that we can say that we're enough in any given moment or feel worthy, but what is it that keeps us driving to do more? It's almost like there is just a little bit more work to do each time. And something I learned from a mentor, a guy from the Gathering of Men, Jacob, in this kind of integration online Zoom that we did, was about the initiation cycle. And so say for you, when you stepped into business and coaching for men, it was like, that was the call. You're like, this is the call, this is the thing I'm going to do. And then there was the challenge. And the challenge is everything that came with it, right? So it's the ups and downs, all the things that you had to face throughout that process. But then he talks about there's the celebration. And this is like a really condensed version of the hero's journey, like where they just kind of compress it all together into these 3 stages. And it was funny because they made an example of David Goggins, who we can all know and love, but that's someone who just kind of keeps doing the thing. But he said he never celebrates. So he'll usually, it looks like he just goes from the call, whatever the challenge may be, to the challenge and back to the call and back to the challenge. And so like there's that missing point of celebration there. Whereas I feel like for you, and tell me if I'm wrong and tell me your experience of it, after you finished the 58 marathons, after you've started the business and things have gone well, have you given yourself time to celebrate these things at times? And have you let people celebrate that with you? Have you been, receiving of the compliments and support that you get for the cool stuff that you've done?
I have. I didn't always, but as I've gotten older, you realize, to me, these moments are fleeting, right? And we're not defined by them. So I'm not defined by running a business. I'm not defined by playing rugby. I'm not defined by the 58. It's a moment in time and a cool experience. And I love it for what it is when it's in that moment. then I get to look back. Like I ran the last 5K of the marathon by myself just to think and like be grateful, and like that was me taking it in. And then the next day, awesome. And even now writing the book and doing those things have been a beautiful time for me to just actually appreciate like the incredible people that believed in me and were with me all steps of the way. The fact that my body did that. My mind did that. Like that is, it's hard to not grow in confidence, like in a big way off the back of that. So I definitely appreciate it. And I'm always going to be able to lean back on that when times get tough and go, dude, you did this. You're great. But I also then go, okay, well, and this is what I guess what I was talking about before, where it's like we're not always present. We need to at times reach back and lean on that, but we shouldn't be defined by the past. It's just there when we need it. Same with the future. I believe why I'm now moving towards the things that I'm moving towards is because I don't want my last great adventure or my last great win to be the start of 2025. That is a stepping stone to what's to come, and it always will be. So there's the challenge, there's those 3 steps that you said. It's important, and year upon year we want to grow, and obviously what the growth looks like is different because life changes, right? I'll have a kid next year, so how that looks is very different, but there will still be an element of challenge of overcoming something that's crazy, but then also just being like, wow, like how epic is a human body? How epic is community? How epic is it taking a risk? Like it doesn't always pay off, but fuck, it's fun. Like this is life. And so to your point, like those 3 steps are really important. And I definitely didn't, when I rode 30 marathons in 30 days, that was to prove a point. There was no celebration there. That was purely just out of like, I believe I need to show people what I'm capable of. Whereas the 58 was never that. It was about so much more than me and what we were doing. It was more than a run. Like it was the people that were messaging me, the people, that was my definition of being on stage. Like I was hoping the people who were behind the screens were feeling that same feeling I felt when I was listening to Ben. What about for you? Where are you in that cycle? Like, do you feel you celebrate your growth and what you've achieved?
I think I find it hard to receive compliments in that at times. I can, but there's always times where I'm thinking, okay, what could be better? But sometimes it's in the moment too, right? Sometimes I could be teaching a class. I'm like, oh, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good. But then once I get the feedback after it, I'm like, oh, it was good. Yeah, great work. I think I'm in the same boat. I just know that if I get tied up on one win, I don't want that to let me or to hold myself back from pursuing more in future. So I would definitely be someone who probably hasn't looked towards the celebration part of it at times, but I think it's probably been a lot more gradual too, because there's things that I've done, and in essence of the daily discomfort, right? Like for you, your 58 marathons was me jumping into the ring once, like for Muay Thai. Like I still remember that morning. I'm not sure if I said this last time. I was journaling right up to that, and I was literally I was tearing up that morning of my fight because I was so proud of myself for going through this grueling training process. Like it was the hardest training I've ever done. And it ran deep because I was a kid who didn't stand up for himself growing up at the times that I needed to. And I think my own celebration was kind of just getting there, and regardless or if I won or lost that night, which I wound up losing, the experience was just awesome. And like I was so happy even the next day, so I did allow myself to celebrate that. So I think I would even say on that note, like I celebrate the things where I know I've just given like pretty much my 100% to it. Like I haven't really shied away from it too much, and I've really gone through the journey that got me to whatever that outcome was. Whereas if I feel like I didn't give my best effort, I probably don't give myself enough of a pat on the back. And there's a bit of a paradox in that, I guess, too, or a contradiction within that, because, you know, someone could be saying that was a really good job that I've done on something, but in my own head, on my own standards, being a bit of a perfectionist at times, I'm like, oh, well, it could always be better, could always be better. So, you know, that's the journey that I'm going through now, and I, you know, will be a student of over the next few years of my life, is like understanding maybe how to give myself a pat on the back more, even for things that I don't feel like were up to a certain standard.
I think when you stop looking at things as being the goal being the main thing and the journey. And once again, it's very cliche. Everyone says it's always about the journey. The goal is literally the direction. That's all it ever is. And there's very few goals that will change your life in terms of they're a stepping stone in the right direction. And whether you win, lose, draw, it doesn't matter. It's the feedback that you need to then make a better plan for the next time, whether you choose to deviate from that plan and just go, look, that's not what I wanted, or I do want to win that fight, so now I know what to work on. I'm going to learn more about my next opponent. I'm going to work on my block. Like all of those things, that's what we need. And it's the journey of becoming, which is the best, because my belief is it doesn't matter what field of life or what modality or domain you're trying to improve. It's very simple. If you can do an honest audit about where you're at and set the goal in the middle of the things that have to happen, it's like you need to own your impact, like how you're showing up, how you're allowing the world to experience you, your disciplines, what habits do you have, even to how do you talk to yourself. All of these things are the micro differences between the people who are getting the results that you want and the people who don't. Getting clear on where you are and then designing the path of where you want to be, and the things that are in between that are who you need to become, and they aren't just a quick fix generally, because you're having to change beliefs, you're having to learn new skills, shape attitudes, change the story in your mind, and there's so much stuff that you can do to break that down, but ultimately it's about who you need to become, and that's all done through finding evidence, which means you have to change your behaviors. That's the only way you're going to find evidence that you can or cannot do something. I'm going through it now, I'm documenting it. It's one part of the 58 marathons I didn't document that I wish I really documented was when I have my next big challenge. I do not believe it's possible right now, and I'm not announcing it because it's still so far from what I think is my body and my mind and is physically capable for me. But there's also this inkling that maybe I could do it. But what I need to do to get to that point is find evidence. And how do I find evidence? By following a training plan that's going to move me in the direction of that. I know that I can back up multiple things. I've got that evidence. But now it's just a speed, like a performance thing that I have to do to start putting out there and start getting some certain tests done to then go, actually, I think with a good 18 months, this is possible. And that's the becoming. But in that process, I'm constantly battling with the doubt and I'm having to rewrite the story. You know, there's my initial story of, Lockie, that's not possible. You're not built like a marathon runner. All of the other excuses to, okay, that's the current story. I don't like that film. Let's build my own film where it's like, Lockie, you are capable of doing this. Here's why. You've done this, and this. And you do follow things to a T. You're very diligent and disciplined and you work hard. It's possible. And I just continue telling myself that story until that becomes the main screening in my mind. But that takes time. And it's not always easy. And not only is it that, someone else is going to want to put their story over the top of my story. And I'm like, get out of my cinema. I'm writing my chapter in my life.
What does Joe Rogan say? He's like, be the hero of your own movie. And if you really look into that with depth, like there is a lot of meaning to it. It's interesting when you say, it makes me think of a friend of ours, Cam Flavel, when you say, not built like a marathon runner. When that guy told me the distance that he was running as an ex-prop, or I'm not sure if he was playing legal union, I was like, this is insane. Like, and he wound up running like 500 and something kilometers. I was like, that is full on. So, and for you too, coming from a footy background and doing the marathons, mate, I did one on Sunday for the lead up to this. I
saw that too.
Flying. Well, I thought though, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it was mainly just my feet were super sore. And I was like, imagine doing 58 of these in a row. And it asked the next question, which is a good segue of what we were just talking about here, is how did you prepare for it? We didn't talk about this last time, and we don't have to go into the finest detail, but how did you prepare for 58 marathons in 58 days? What did that look like? Physical preparation, even maybe a little bit on the nutrition side of things, and we could say recovery. I think we realistically know get enough sleep, but even just mentally, what was it like?
Yeah. So I had no idea how to do it, so I hired a coach, and the coach's main goal was, we don't want you starting the 58 injured. Like, that was his main concern, because my initial thing was like, I'm going to start running like 200K a week. That's the plan, because you would ultimately be running 300K a week in total volume. But he just said, like, Lockie, all we need to do is get you prepped for one marathon with a couple of like back-to-back long runs. And I said, well, I need to do a back-to-back marathon. That's one of my non-negotiables if we work together, because mentally I want to know that I've at least done a back-to-back marathon. Not only physically can my body do it, but mentally, what does it feel like the next day waking up? That was important. And that's what we did. We just literally built up to, I think my longest week was 140 kilometers. So pretty much just training for a standard marathon. The only thing we didn't do was a lot of threshold work. Normally in a training block, you would do a bit more of that. We were just knowing it's really time on legs, the occasional bit of speed work and a bit of strength work. And that's what we did. An important part of that training block, though, was nutrition, because I never thought about this, and this is why it was so good having Dean to coach me. He just said, look, we're not necessarily fueling for the current marathon, for the one that you're on, but you're fueling for the next day, because you're backing up. You're going to be so depleted that we need to make sure we don't mess up the fueling strategy. So I realized that we were going to burn around 7,000 calories a day, like 6,000 to 7,000 calories a day. I was currently eating about 2,000 calories a day. So there's a big jump. And you don't just start the marathons and automatically start eating that much, no matter how hungry you are, because your body has to adapt, or you're going to make yourself sick. So we did 16 weeks of building up my calories. Every week we were increasing the calories and just seeing which foods worked well with my body during that amount of stress. And that was the process. So we literally, when I started with Dean, a bit of backstory. Obviously, I had a decade worth of training from footy to, I ran for Australia in Spartan racings. Like, I've done a lot of strength and endurance events, so I had a good baseline, but we only did a 16-week proper marathon block for the marathons. The other time I was training for, Spartan racing and various other things. So in hindsight, you'd probably have a longer build, and we may have done the programming differently, but that worked. And I do believe a big reason why I didn't have any long-term injuries apart from the injury I did to myself was because I had a good strength base as well.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point to bring up too. Like, from both of us having coaching backgrounds, like, I've worked with heaps of clients in the past, and you see these people getting into running and they're having a rough time, but it's like, well, did you play sports as a kid growing up, as a teenager? And if no, you haven't had the same sort of development as other people have had. And you can look at people excelling in their sports, but they've been training for it for so long, and people only look at the top of the iceberg. They don't see all the work, all the time that went into it, all the structural adaptations that have happened, occurred over the years. I love when you brought up the nutrition side of it. You reminded me of that William Googe when he was doing the crazy running around Australia or whatever, and seeing what he was eating. I was like, knowing myself, I was like, that would wreak havoc. Like, how is he consuming? I don't know if he was having like pies and donuts, crazy stuff. I don't know how he did it. What were your like go-to foods during this process, like when you're actually doing the marathons?
Yeah. So we had a nice plan that was like healthy to reduce inflammation. But when you're on the road in America, for anyone who has traveled through America, 90% of the country is just shocking food. Like, you'll go to some of the places we were in, there was like a Servo and like a Burger King. That's it. Or a McDonald's, like really bad food. And initially I was like, I'm not eating that until we drive past like a Walgreens or, a nice healthy place. But what happened is I lost 4 kilos in the first week. And obviously I was cramping a lot because I was so depleted. Like, I had no sodium, and my physio was just like, mate, I don't give a crap what you eat. You just need to eat a lot and as quickly as possible from when you finish. So the go-to meal became a McChicken burger meal with a strawberry thick shake, a soft serve, and chips. And I would smash that. Literally, the boys would have it ready as soon as I finished. And then, like, we would try and find like a healthier sort of alternative, like a Mexican restaurant or something like that. And then the breakfast, we were staying at Best Western, so we would just eat whatever was in the buffet there, like waffles. And it was just purely a calories game, which blew my mind, because I think I shared this on the last one, but going into this run, like, I was a robot in terms of how I recovered, how I trained, how everything was tracked to a T. But when you're on the road, you don't have the opportunity to sauna, to ice bath, to stretch in nice places, to eat all the nice foods, and my body still nailed it. Like, your body is so incredible. And what that taught me was that a lot of the things that I stressed about having done perfectly from all of these routines and things aren't really relevant to success. They're nice to haves, but people have been successful in their life for centuries without all of these new tools and devices. So for me, I started going, okay, well, what is the intent of me doing these things? And there's definitely lessons in it, but they're not going to define me if I don't have access to them, because once again, not everyone has access to things that we're very fortunate to have access to: saunas, ice baths, etc. And I don't want people to be limited because they think they need that. And I realized that on this run. Like, I had nothing. We had no routine. We didn't know where we were waking up, what conditions we were running in, but we made it happen. We had the common goal, and we just knew we had to, roll up our sleeves and get it done. And so from a food perspective, it just meant I had to shatter a belief about eating well as I had for, almost a decade, to go, okay, I don't ever eat fast food in Australia. I hadn't eaten McDonald's for probably 5 years, and here I am smashing it every day. What the hell?
Did you just get home and you're like, I just want some salmon, some broccolini, bit of sweet potato?
Yeah, dude. Like, it was tough to break up with McDonald's, because if you do anything for 58 days,
Yeah.
it's like it becomes your thing. But yeah, I was definitely just craving feeling fresh. Like, I just wanted that fresh food feeling.
Yeah. So let's get into, we had a question on this the last time, but if we steer it a little bit differently, what do you think your biggest learning curve was from these marathons from a mental perspective? And just like, if it's self-discovery, if it's anything that you learned about mental resilience, anything in that regard?
I think mental resilience is really simple to me. Resilience, when it's moving towards a goal, is resilience. When you're putting your head down and grinding towards something that doesn't matter, that's stupidity. And my wife told me that. On the run, and ever since the run, people have said, like, you're so resilient, Lockie. How can I be more resilient? I want to be more resilient. And to me, resilience is one, I call this the resilience loop, but having the North Star or the goal that you want to move towards, because that's how you know what choices you need to make. And that's step 2 in the resilience loop. Life is full of choices. And the cool thing about choices is they carry friends. And the friends of choices is consequences. So for me, I knew the goal was to complete the 58, and we had a goal to raise $100,000 for mental health. And I knew the sacrifices that my team had made to be there. It wasn't just about me. And the sponsors had made to invest in just a random guy. The choices I faced when I was injured on day 1 was like, I either quit or I keep going. And I didn't know whether I had stress fractures and I was going to be out in the cold for 4+ hours a day in the snow. And the consequences of quitting meant that I wouldn't raise the funds, we wouldn't achieve our goal, and people had invested in me for nothing. That sucked. I didn't like that idea. Choice 2 was and this is the thing, people only want to do things if they're guaranteed. Nothing's fucking guaranteed. I wasn't guaranteed that if I continued going that I would complete it. There was still a long way to go, but the choice was I get the opportunity to keep cracking on and potentially achieve it, also raise the funds, but most importantly, the consequence of that around my self-esteem and how I felt about myself would have been skyrocketing if I continued going. So I chose to do that. And then the third step of resilience is stacking small wins, because resilience is continuing to show up even when quitting is the easier option. And so if you can stack a small win to the point where you're like, today, and we talk about this, like some days you feel highly confident, other days you're not having a good day, you're having a doubt day. And so on the doubt days, you just lower your standards to the point where, oh, I can do that step today. I can take that step. It might be half a step or it might be a full step. It doesn't matter. But then on the days where you're feeling confident, you might take 5 steps. But what that's doing is continuing the momentum towards achieving the outcome. And that to me is resilience. And that's what I learned. And I've walked away from that having achieved and overcome insane injury, been out in minus 20 degrees, minus 6 degrees plus for 32 days straight for 4 to 10 hours a day, consistently, frostbite, all of the things. And here I am post it, and I'm like, I haven't even scratched the surface of what I'm capable of. And I was saying to you before we started, Michael, the sacrifices that I made and the obsession that I had around completing this and pulling this together, getting sponsors, having people believe in it, having my friends give up moments in their life to be there. If I had done that in another area of my life, things would look wildly different. But for me, the thing that really lights me up is doing these challenges, because I know there's people on the screen behind it, or people who are following along who are exactly like I was when Ben was speaking on stage that day. And that's just my way of doing it. I thought it was through, I love what I do from a business standpoint, but to me, I never am going to have what people would perceive as a bloody empire in a business. That's just not what drives me. And I'm not prepared to do that. And the final thing that I learned, and I have a film of this, was day 17. I was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. I ran off. It was black ice everywhere. I ran off without my gloves, my hat, my water, and my drinks. And I was losing my mind at this point. I was so fatigued. I just was not thinking straight. I got about 8K into it, and I'm just freezing running around this lake. And I legitimately thought I was going to die. It was the first time I've had in my life where I've made such a big mistake here. I'm freezing, I'm thirsty, I'm fucking losing my mind. And all I wanted in that moment was my family. And to me, that made me realize everything else that we're chasing constantly, it's why I continue to harp on about it, doesn't matter. None of it. The status, the titles, the recognition does not mean shit. When have you ever read the book Five Truths of the Dying? Five Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware?
No.
Everyone should read it. She was a palliative care nurse, Australian, wrote a beautiful book. And she got data from all of these people, obviously in palliative care, from all walks, different ages, young 32-year-old people to 90. And the common regrets that they had about life was, I wish I'd allowed myself to have more fun. I wish I stayed in contact with my friends. I wish I took more risks. I wish I allowed myself to be happy. And so if this is from people who are at death's door, and to me in that moment, I felt like I was on death's door, I was thinking the same thing. Why would I think that I'm not going to be that statistic and try and build a life that rejects those narratives? So therefore, it's going back to what full circle from where we were speaking before with people that I see who are successful on paper but lack everything else. To me, they're not successful at all. I never want that life because I don't want to be on that deathbed. And that's why even to this day, I know that I don't want to build a massive business. I've got a business that supports my lifestyle. It's fulfilling. I'm making a difference, but there are other things that I want to explore that mean so much to me, and they allow me to have the adventures and tell stories with people. And that's more important to me. And I'm not going to change because society tells me I should. And so they were some of the biggest lessons, and it just really reaffirmed that during that run, because I had so many moments where I didn't have those things available to me and I thought that they might be gone. And I was like, damn, if I could just have one more conversation, I would.
It's an interesting point, because do you feel like for someone who doesn't have that to lean back to, what do you think it is in those moments that drives them? If they don't have family, if they don't have the deeper root behind that is that connection, right? Like I'm imagining if you're in that instance, you're in that adversity that you're dealing with, it's just the embrace of your partner or soon to be child.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think friends, even like some people, look, family doesn't mean bloodline for a lot of people. I understand that for sure, but it's the people that you feel connected to. There was a guy who messaged me yesterday on Instagram and said, what if I've just accepted that I'm lonely? I was like, you can't accept that because the data is so heavily linked to the fact that you're probably not going to be here in a certain... Now, I didn't say this to him, but I'm thinking like the data is skewed. We need to help men. We need to help people build connection. Like it's a skill set. How do you learn to engage in conversation? How do you find like-minded people? How do you learn to be vulnerable? How do you build rapport? How do you deal with conflict? Like all of these are little sub skill sets that we can learn to actually create friends, because it's easy when you're at school and you just put into a little pen with, other kids your age and similar interests learning stuff. You grow through things a lot when you're younger. Whereas when we're older, we're already stuck in routine. There's not significant life changes to grow through with people. So we aren't building rapport. And so for people who maybe feel lonely, I just want to keep challenging them. And the work that you're doing with the daily discomfort and the group that you have, the group that I have, extends the opportunity for anyone to come be part of it. It's like and I can imagine you'd be the same. We just want people to live a great life and be around people who will support them, and they can learn some skills to take that next step in whatever life, a great life, looks like for them. Because if you have all the money in the world, or if you keep achieving all these wild achievements and you've got no one to share it with, that to me just seems so freaking empty. I don't want that.
Yeah. You made me think of a story a friend told me where he was at this guy's mansion, and this guy was a very well-to-do guy, and he was sitting there crying in his McLaren. Like, I don't know if it was a P1 or something. He's sitting there crying in his McLaren because he just had no one, right? He had all the money in that, but there was nothing at the end of the day. And it just zooms back to what you've said here. It's like, when all is said and done, it's like the biggest thing that I think we can get from this life is connection, human connection. And when you talk about the guy struggling with loneliness there, as massive of a, because if we look at the kind of what precedes depression, it's usually loneliness. And maybe I've misinterpreted that wrong, but if you feel lonely, there's a high likelihood that you're pretty depressed about it at the same time. And there was some of the beauty that I saw in that session on Saturday. We were down at the beach, we mix it up a little bit, but there's also something about, I'm sure you experienced this at the Upskill weekend, which you did recently, about going through challenging things with a bunch of guys. And it's a very overused term, but having like a bit of a brotherhood there is something very special about, being with your partner, being around the feminine, being around your mother, sisters, whoever it may be. But there is something very compelling and strong about being around like almost like a team-like energy. So it's like you playing footy back in the day. When you're with a group of guys who are like on a mission together, that riles you up, and that gives you relatability. It gives you connection. And to this man you spoke of, I think that's what they haven't had in a long, long time. Maybe they've never had it, but I can speak my own advice from that. But I'd be interested to really help that person. What would be the advice that you give them specifically if they struggle with connection? Like you said, it's a skill set. Where do they start? Like, if you're a guy struggling with loneliness, where do you even begin to start?
For me, you have to take the risk to put yourself out there. Easier said than done. So why aren't people putting themselves out there? They maybe feel like they don't have any value to add. They're sick, the fear of rejection, all of those sorts of things. So it comes back to first and foremost doing like a SWOT analysis, essentially, like what are your strengths, weaknesses, etc. But if you can focus on and find evidence, and this is what I mean by like stacking small wins. Everyone is an expert in something that you're not. So the individual who feels lonely, I can promise you, if I were to have a conversation with you, you would be an expert in so much stuff that my jaw would hit the floor because I'm so fascinated with how you're talking about it. The next step is, once you start collecting those wins and start getting a little bit of evidence that maybe, I do have a bit of value to offer, we got to find a way to interject ourselves into a community. And that can be hard because a lot of communities are set in stone. They don't like new people, which is fine. And that's where we look at things that, like what you're doing, or I would go to a professional, whether it's someone that I can just start speaking to, whether it's a counselor, it's a therapist, it's a coach, it's a psychologist, because it's not so much what I'm talking about, it's the fact that I'm developing the skill to then start building my confidence up and learn to talk again. The other thing that I would be doing is consuming and rewriting the stories in my head. Because if you think about life, right, it's stimulus. So what we see, hear, feel, all of that goes into our brain. The moment that it goes into our brain is deleting, distorting, and generalizing that information, because there's so much happening that if we were to take everything in, we'd all be just running around like anxious chooks. And from that, we then start creating a story based off our beliefs, our values, our experiences, our attitude to things, and then the story starts playing. And so if you're telling stories that you don't necessarily want to watch, but they're just on repeat, we know that we've got to work on some of the values work, the beliefs, the interpretations of things, etc., because that then influences our state. Right? Our state is how we feel. Right? Whether you feel happy, you feel sad, you feel angry, you feel insecure, you don't feel worthy, right? That's a state. Now, our state generally influences our behavior. Okay, so if you're not happy with your behaviors, we've got to look at like, what's the bottleneck here? Is it my state? Am I always in a sad or a bitter or a pessimistic mood? Do I need to start rewriting the story? If I do, one of my psychologists, actually was a coach, said to me years ago, he's like, Lockie, you can't always choose your first thought, but you can decide on the follow-up one. And I thought the exact same thing with the story, which is where I got the idea to just start brainwashing myself to tell myself things that were going to benefit my life. And I couldn't always do that consciously. So then I would listen to audiobooks. And one audiobook, and no joke, I've listened to this audiobook over 500 times over the last 10 years, is The Art of Exceptional Living by Jim Rohn. It's very short, and every time I listen to it, I take away something new because I'm dealing with something different. And that to me is conditioning myself to think how I want to think about life without me having to actively be writing the story, if that makes sense. And the other thing that influences that is exercise. Like exercise, motion creates emotion. You said it then. So to the individual who's feeling lonely, start moving your body, go for a walk. And I know that there's always like some people don't feel confident. They don't know how to move. They don't know there's all the limiting beliefs, right? But if you can just start walking with an audiobook in, you're moving your body. So you're conditioning your body, the physical self, and you're starting to condition and influence the mental self. You will become unstoppable once you start doing that because you will feel valuable. You'll be growing and you'll go, fuck. This is how I did it, because I was learning these new things and I was so excited to do a post or a video about this because it was changing my life. I thought someone else out there is going to want to hear it. And that to me was how then I started moving and putting myself into different social circles. And I know this works, Michael, because I've done it twice. I did it when I moved to Brisbane, didn't have the social circle, and I did it in 2023 when I moved to Nashville. I had no friends, no connections, no one. And what was I doing? I was moving my body, I was conditioning my mind, and then I was inserting myself into social situations. And then all of a sudden I have a network 6 months later. Wow. It's not complicated.
Yeah. And I think even giving like people the easier entry point, because I think probably for us, we're going to be more enticed to some sort of movement or training based on like athletic backgrounds. However, for some people, it can be a little bit intimidating if they haven't done it before. Someone stepping into the gym first time, going on a run because they think running shit because they've done it a few times and it was obviously a hard experience. But I love you bringing the point of listening to audiobooks and podcasts. One of the guys at one of our sessions months and months ago said, you've got to pretend like when you're listening to these podcasts, like if it's a couple of people talking or it's one person talking, that's your mate or that's your mentor, and they're specifically talking to you there. And it's not to replace other people, but it's like, oh, they're giving me this value, this information, they've given me their time of day, and I get to go out into the world with this. And then you've also got more things to talk about with people. I think something I saw with a few people, it was actually a couple of clients in the past, and this is the sad thing that can happen with personal training at times with lonely people and lonely men, that they can start to see the therapist or the PT as their only friend, and they're not actually going out to source those other social experiences there because they lack the kind of skill set and strategies to do so. But I also feel like at the same time, they're not really reaching out and learning new things and understanding how to communicate with other people effectively. So you may have been the same. I used to find it really useful listening to psychology and behavior podcasts, and some of the things I have no idea what they're talking about. But there's always a few chunks of gold, right? You might listen to an hour podcast. People might listen to this today, and there's 2 or 3 things that stand out for them. And that can be enough, and you can always rewatch it or listen to another podcast. But I think that's a really good key point. And I love the kind of, it's almost like a little phase system. It's like you go through this walking, listening to the podcast, you build up a bit of confidence, you start putting yourself out there socially. And then from there, like you talked about earlier, that's the evidence. You're like, oh, positive social interaction. Or maybe even if it's a negative one, it's like, well, what was bad about it? Did I just not click with that person? Like we weren't aligned. Or maybe did I come off a bit needy or something? I wasn't listening enough. I was talking too much. You can always learn from those situations.
That's the audit, right? Like when I first started in business, I was like, oh, I need to be around millionaires. And millionaires did not want to spend time with me. I had no value to add. And I could have interpreted that in, put it through that whole system I just said before in two ways. One, you're just not worthy of being around a millionaire, give up. Or secondly, I could say, who do I need to become? Which is why I'm so focused on who we need to become, because it never stops. Right, who do I need to become to be able to add value in that circle that I want to be included in? That made me have to start taking an interest in things that I wasn't necessarily always interested in. But then when I started to understand it, I was like, oh, actually, I am interested in it now. And then I could provide more value to things. So the hardest question for a lot of people who are feeling lonely right now is, would you hang out with you? And the harsh reality for a lot of people is no, they wouldn't. That's why they are retreating, because they don't feel worthy. Be kind to yourself in that that's okay, because you can change that. And that's one of the most empowering thoughts. It's not easy, but you can change that, and you can do that behind closed doors initially to build yourself up, to start feeling like you have something worth offering by listening to things. Explore what you're curious about, but most importantly, have new experiences and learn from the feedback of them. Go out and do shit that you've either always been curious about and never done, or just try new things that maybe you think you might like, or just do something because it's going to give you feedback, right? The guys at that retreat last weekend, I was a leadership thing I was at, we went abseiling. I'm freaking out about height. And there was another guy who was way more scared than I was. But this guy impressed me so much because we went to this part where it was the 30-meter abseil, which also had a meter lip, and then it was down another 100 meters. So it looked massive. And we all got down it. I was like a, tense dog going down it. I didn't breathe. And this bloke was just like, no, I'm not doing it. Anyway, we ended up just saying, hey, mate, like, let's just go to the edge. I clip in, obviously, but just go to the edge, and just, that's like a fear-facing thing for him. And he did. And he stood there for like 3 minutes. He didn't abseil it, but that was a huge win for him. And like, we were all so pumped for this guy because now he's walked off that mountain, and in the bus, he's like, I can't believe I stood that close to the edge of a freaking canyon. And I can only imagine what that's going to do for him now, because he had this new experience. He didn't achieve the end goal considered for what, abseiling is about, but he still did something he never would have normally done, and he's going to feel fucking amazing for it.
Yeah. What do they call it? Like exposure therapy? Like if he's someone with
Yeah.
a fear of heights, like that's thrown into the deep end there. I think it just reinforces that point of you need some sort of evidence, right? It's the same as someone who's scared to go for the walk, go for the run, go to the gym, do the marathon, whatever it may be. You need to show yourself that you can. And that is honestly the perfect, I think, directive into the next point. Like the man that can project, is that kind of a bit of the philosophy behind that? It's like being the man that can do all the things. Is that a part of what you coach? Is it a little bit of a journey of showing people that they can through evidence by, giving them a little bit of a journey of like, all right, what are your challenges now? Like you said, giving them an audit. What are the things that are holding you back? All right, well, now we need to tick off this. Now we need to tick off this. Maybe you don't have to go abseiling off a mountain, but there's something that you've got to do.
Yeah, definitely. Because it's, to me, how I've changed my life has been through doing different things, not thinking about it and constantly talking about it. It's definitely important because we need to understand where you're at and where you want to get to. And then it's who do we become? And that's by doing things, right? And for me, the ultimate outcome for guys is to be strong in their body, calm in their mind, clear on their purpose, and confident in their life. And that's different for everyone. But how we get there is the same way with the audit, deciding what the end goal is, and then working towards it, because you're going to get the feedback that's going to redirect you and help you become more clear on that. And that, to me, is what it's always been about. And that's why the name, when I was sitting there 8 years ago, my wife actually came up with the name, because I was just like, I just want to help men see who they can become, because I was becoming someone that I didn't think was possible. And I just was so excited to have other people experience that. And then it was like the man that can be a great husband, a great business owner, a vulnerable person when he needs to, can be strong, fit and healthy, like all the things. You can do it. It's just about understanding who you must become.
Yeah. What were some of the big wins for you? What were maybe 2 to 3 big wins or things that you did along the way that you maybe thought you couldn't do? And the same for this guy who stepped to the edge. that kind of just gave you so much confidence within yourself to approach that next challenge?
That's a really, really good question. Do you mean in business or just in life in general?
Anything, man. Yeah, business, relationship.
I think the first one was putting myself out there on social media and allowing myself to be seen. Even when I was playing rugby, I was wearing a mask. I wasn't comfortable to have people, almost like what we were talking about earlier, offline, where it's like you step into that leadership, right, where we hold back because we're not ready for that responsibility. I don't think I was ready for a long time to accept the responsibility and the criticism, right? With responsibility comes criticism. And I was still bashing myself up. I wasn't ready for the world to tell me I was shit. So that was a really big thing for me to start putting myself out on social media and be vulnerable, own up to things that I'd done wrong, share what I was excited about, document things that I was working towards achieving, because none of that's guaranteed, right? Like, you're taking a big punt on yourself to publicly fail. And so that was huge. That was game changing for me. Another thing was building community. I had mates and I had a lot of associate or like acquaintances, but I'd never had a group of blokes in this phase of my life who were as focused on just becoming the best version of themselves as I was, and the compound effect of that. Like, I would chat with dads, and this was, years before I was even becoming a dad, but I wanted to know, because that was my definition of success, was becoming a man that I would love to be fathered by. And so I'm getting to have those conversations. I'm also getting to see men who are hyper successful financially, and I get to then learn all the shit that they've sacrificed and what they regret. And I'm like, cool, maybe success isn't that. And so community was a second big lesson. The third one is going all in, and very cliche, but burn the boats. And people say you always want to have a plan B. And I agree for certain things, right? Whether it's because if you've got responsibility where you have to pay a mortgage, feed a family, etc., don't burn the boats. That's dumb. But in regards to the stage of life I was in and the risk that I was building towards with the 58 marathons or the 30 marathons in 30 days or the things that we'd done before, like, if I start obsessing about something, you can't push that to the side, dude. You have to go all in on making that a reality. And if you're worried about certain things, you just work out how to include that in the desired outcome. So for me, as my wife said, you can't keep doing these world record attempts and stuff and not make it financially viable. Like, you have to find a way that it's going to continue to grow the Man That Can project and inspire people, because otherwise you're destroying your body, not in a bad way, but like you're investing so much time and money, and you're also stealing from our marriage, because once again, there's huge investment in other things. I'm away traveling, that you have to make it build towards our goal as a family as well. And so when I went all in on that, I was like, cool. I just know that I was picking up the phone constantly when I was getting rejected by sponsors. Like, did not get a single shoe sponsor, right? But I was doing whatever I could. I was then thinking about every sponsor I'm calling from now. I want to have a personalized proposal on how the visibility that they'll get with me will impact their brand. And it's a partnership, not just a transaction of money. To then understanding that for the 12 months prior, I was still traveling all around the world. And what I didn't realize until now was I was actually training myself for the 58 travel days by, flying from Nashville to LA, getting out of the airport, running 23K, getting back into the airport, flying back to Australia. Like, that was prepping me for it. And I didn't even think about it at the time. I was just committed to my program because I'd gone all in. I wanted to know that I had the evidence and I'd done everything within my power to make it a success, because I knew there was going to be enough variables to try and sabotage me. So those were the three things I guess I've learned over the years.
I love it, man. And if those are the three chunks of gold that someone takes away from this, perfect. You actually, when you said burn the bridges, I don't know if I've told you before. So when I teach breathwork and meditation at the gym, I actually read out a poem each time, and I'll write these poems. Like, I'll put it in my phone or write it down. But there's just 4 lines from it. It's like, stepping into your power, what a harrowing thought at that. To claim the responsibility, burn the bridges, and not look back. And it just resonated with what you said there. Like, it is such a scary thought when you remove a safety net. And for me in my life, it was simple little things that people probably overlook, but a lot of guys probably are stuck with. It's like, are you just sitting there every night watching TV or scrolling your phone and eating food? Because that is your safety net. That is what keeps you playing small. And why is it there? Like, we can have a simple approach. It's like, all right, we'll go out, go for dinner with someone, have a chat, go to the gym, do all these things. But I think sometimes people can underestimate how much like little habits can hold them back, and again, how they keep them playing small over time. But I think what you've said there, just some of the challenges that you've overcome and then the wisdom that it's given you, I think everyone will be able to take something away from that and then even just apply it to their own individual context.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. It comes back to everyone listening though. Just do more things. Like, have new experiences, because everything in the moment you may not see the lesson, but when you reflect upon it in the weeks, months, years later, you'll be able to draw from that, and it's empowering. And you're like, wow, I'm so glad I had that experience because that taught me. But in that moment, I was like, this is the worst thing in the world happening to me.
Yeah. More, maybe, so yeah, do more things, more
Have more
experiences,
new experiences.
focus less on materials maybe. This reminds me, so my partner's parents, it's my first time doing Christmas with them, and apparently
How good.
they buy the, I guess, the son-in-laws, well, we're not that far yet, but a gift, and it's a gift card. And so Bella's asked me, what gift card do I want? And there's a little list that they've got there, and I look at them and I see red balloon, and I'm like, I want an experience. Yeah. Like, if that equates to us to go hot air ballooning or jumping on a jet ski or jumping out of a plane, whatever it is, like, experiences are going to teach you so much more than a Gucci bag can, or a cool car 100%. That puts you into debt can. So I think there's so much wisdom in that itself, and as simple as it is, I don't think it needs to be complex. Like, our body, I remember hearing this from Jordan Peterson one time, it's like we literally have an expression of like new protein or DNA each time we enter a new environment or go through a situation we haven't gone through before. It literally changes you like on a physical level as a person.
Oh, mate, if you think about, for anyone listening, who you follow on social media, I can promise you the majority of people you are following have great stories to tell, or of filming them doing some pretty fun, adventurous stuff. And we live through that. The question is, why are we not out there creating our own stories? And why are we not out there building our own documentaries that people follow? Because at the end of the day, that's all that matters. No one's going to give a shit about how much money you earned or how hard you worked for someone or something. People want to just share relatable stories and see you striving for greatness and living a great life, because at the end of the day, that's what draws people in. And it's proof in social media. It's like real-time feedback. The video, even for me, like the content that does the best, even though I love putting out coaching content, Michael, people do not care. I had a guy saying yesterday, because I posted a video of my 58 marathons, he's like, mate, just please keep posting that. Like, I lap that up. He's like, your other stuff's fine, but I don't really care about it. And I'm like, I appreciate that. That's fine.
The funny thing is, like, there can be a lot of effort that goes like into the marathons content, but it's like, obviously you would have had someone filming. It's so ironic. There's other coaches that I know, and we joke about the fact that it's the post that you put so much effort into, like being the educational post or the coaching post, that gets like no attention. And then you're like, hey, I ran a marathon, and everyone's like, yeah, well done. And you're like, damn, what? Man.
No, it blows my mind.
There was one thing we discussed before we started recording today that I think is important to come with that. When you look at the content that we put out from a coaching perspective, a lot of the time it's information. And what you were saying, what you learned from that weekend that you did, like the men's upskilling or leadership weekend, was in your own right, when you're doing your keynotes, maybe less information and more connection. Like, I think in this day and age, we know now there is so much information out there, and it's hard to take with a grain of salt what works. But I think a lot of the time what we're looking for with that, and originally what we were supposed to be getting from social media platforms, was connection. But right now it's like information, and there's so much junk out there. but it feeds back into your point too, which is wonderful, is like if you're writing your own story, or you're the actor in your own movie, the hero in your own movie, and you can share that story and someone can relate to that, that's going to be so much more empowering for them and meaningful for them as a person. And if we want to go on a tangent, in this day and age, it's very easy to use AI to make everything more easy and convenient. But if we go too far down that rabbit hole, we start to lose our humanity and we start to use the connection, which is, I think, in the theme of, this month as well, for men and for mental health, that is what a lot of us are craving, is connection.
Could not agree more. And it's simple to do, and we don't need any of the devices or the AI stuff to make it happen, because it's been happening for centuries before any of that existed. We just got to put ourselves in the position to do that and develop the skill. And you're only going to be able to do that by doing the thing. Like, you can't think your way to having better relationships. It's not possible. So get out there, like pick up your phone or organize a run with a mate or a gym session or a sauna or a walk or a coffee. It doesn't matter. Or even a camping trip. But just put it in the diary and make it happen, because the more you do it, the more you're like, we should do this more regularly. And when you find yourself saying that, don't just say it, book it in and do it again, and book it in and do it again, because that is when you look back and you go, wow, like I've had an incredible year. I've done a lot of incredible things. And that's purely because you chose to, when you said you wanted to do something, you scheduled it in the diary and then you made it come to life. And that, to me, is agency. Like, every individual has so much more control over their time than they're giving themselves credit for.
I love it, man. I think it's an awesome point to finish on as well. I think a big takeaway from this podcast too is that we can tend to overthink things a lot. We tend to live in our head a lot, and it's the actions that actually are the things that get the outcomes. And if it's not the outcome you're looking for, it's the evidence that you can then audit, and then use that as fuel for whatever you want to do in future. Just before we leave today, Lockie, how can people get in touch with you if they want to do some work with you, even if they just want to look at your content? Like, what's your Instagram, your website, everything like that?
TheManThatCanProject.com. On there, I have a free scorecard that you can take, which helps you it's a self-leadership scorecard to see where you're doing well in life and things that are maybe drifting, and it will give you some actionable, personalized steps to start making some improvements. It's free and it takes literally 2 minutes. If you want to then go to social media, all of the platforms are Lachlan Stuart, and all the content and stuff's available. So jump on over there.
Love it, man. Thank you again for your time. We only had one little disconnect today, I think, from my internet. There was no fire alarm in the building here. I'm assuming this is going to upload properly this time. So thank you for also hosting this through the service that you use. I may have been converted over. So
yes, we're on. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure to do it again. I think you're such a good person. Every time I've spoken to you, I'm just always intrigued and I want to know more about what you're up to. And you just can tell that you genuinely care about people, the way that you continue to bring it back to what's most important around connection and the men and the community. We need more people doing what you're doing. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
Straight back at you, man. And thank you for that.